And hello YouTube, this is Thomas Judge back once again with another YouTube reading guide series, and today is going to be a hell of a video. Today is the 10th of 11 videos that I'll be releasing over these weeks, each of which covers a specific DC event. All these event videos have been made initially, at least, as a byproduct of my Superman reading guide, but you know what? I'm not going to talk about that in too much detail because if you're here, you know exactly what we're talking about. We are talking about the Infinite Crisis mega event, and a mega event is not a term that I use lightly. I've been worried, nervous, and intimidated about doing this video for several weeks. I've been kind of putting it off, to be honest. But with no further ado, what I'm going to do is talk you through every single issue of Infinite Crisis to a level of detail that literally is nowhere else on the internet. Housekeeping rules. As usual for these infographic maps, there are three types of issue for the single issues that I include here. There's 152 issues included in this map. The ones that are with green borders are marked as essential issues. The ones with orange borders are related to the event. So whilst essential ones include key points and cannot be missed, related ones can be missed, but have got some relevant stuff in there. And the ones outlined in red are token issues. I'd recommend skipping them because they only have the faintest link to the event, if any at all. The ones that are solid lines, whatever color they are ones that have branding on them. Ones with dotted lines are ones that don't have branding on them. Right, let's just look straight at it. What are we talking about today? We are talking about Infinite Crisis. What is Infinite Crisis? Well, to start off with, Infinite Crisis is a universe-wide event published from 2005 to 2006 by DC, and it consisted of an eponymous 7-issue comic book limited series written by Jeff Johns, and it had a large number of tie-in books, and I mean a large number of tie-in books. The series storyline is actually a sequel to DC's 1985 event Crisis on Infinite Earths, which rebooted much of DC continuity in an effort to fix 50 years of allegedly contradictory character history. It revisited characters and concepts from that earlier crisis and included the discussion about the DC's multiverse. Some of the characters featured in Infinite Crisis were from that original Crisis on Infinite Earths, and they were alternate versions of icons such as Kal-El. Now, that's Superman, but Kal literally dash L, who came from a parallel universe called Earth 2. And essentially, it's about the theme of the nature of heroism, often contrasting kind of the idea of a dark and conflicted modern day comic reality with memories of a lighter, easier reading, kind of more sanitized, more wholesome America from previous comic book publishing. So, Crisis on Infinite Earths ends with Kal-El, as I say, that's L, the letter L, as well as the Superboy of Earth Prime, Alexander Luthor Jr., and Lois Lane Kent from Earth 2 as well, voluntarily hiding away in paradise, so disappearing as the last surviving heroes of a destroyed multiverse. Now, at the beginning of Infinite Crisis, it's revealed that they've been monitoring the heroes of New Earth, so the Earth we're used to, as the world just gets grittier and darker and grimmer, and they come to believe that this generation is unworthy of the legacy of being a superhero. So they return in an attempt to bring back the multiverse in an effort to restore the kind of more idealistic values of their time. Now, DC officially begins leading up to the new crisis with a one-shot issue called Countdown to Infinite Crisis, which we'll talk about in a second. And there are 4 6-issue limited series that tie into it: Day of Vengeance, Omac Project, Rann-Thanagar War, and Villains United. We're going to be talking about all that in a lot of detail. Once Infinite Crisis ended, its conclusion was followed by the 1 year later event, as well as the 52 event, and then the Countdown event, and then finally the Final Crisis event in 2008. Now, Final Crisis is not going to be covered in these reading guides that I'm doing right now because it has no issues that interact with Superman. But just wanted to put it out there. That's the event. That's the summary. We're about to dive into the reading map. If you're ready and you want to look at it, you can check it out on my channel and on my website where you can click into it and there's an interactive version for you to look at. But with no further ado, here is the reading map. This is the whole thing zoomed out as far as it goes. It is massive. It is sprawling. It is confusing. Just a couple of things before I even dive into it. You do not have to follow this reading guide. I'm going to be talking sort of by areas of the map. So I'll be talking about the Infinite Crises here, issues here, the crossover issues, the core Infinite Crisis series you can see in the middle here, these green issues here, and also the Villains United part of it, the Rann-Thanagar part, and so on and so forth. If you prefer to have this in a simple linear chronology of issues and a rough guesstimate from me as to when to read them, then feel free to pick up the written guide, which is available for this map and in fact for this entire video series. But to be honest, there is no perfect reading sequence for Infinite Crisis by a large margin. So what I'm going to do is just talk you through it in a very type J kind of way. Keep it light, keep it relaxed in your own minds, and let's see how we get on. Well, first things first, we're going to zoom in right to the top. What we have here are a couple of things you need to read. Firstly, we have the Identity Crisis Limited miniseries. We talked about this in the previous video. As you'll see, there's a green line coming from that, following here, going all the way down to this. And what we have here are some what I would consider to be relatively essential issues. So these are the JLA issues from 115 to 119. So we've got 115, 116, 117, 118, and then over to the side we actually have 119. Now, these issues, as you can see, these four are not branded, but this is part of an arc called Crisis of Conscience. And Crisis of Conscience leads into this issue, JLA 119, which is branded, which is branded, as you can see, and as a branded issue that then leads into Infinite Crisis Part 1, which we will talk about in a second. So that's the first thing I just wanted to point out. Where does Identity Crisis fit? It fits right at the beginning and it ties into those JL issues. What else do people talk about? People talk about this. People say you should read the Return of Donna Troy four-parter here as well, right at the beginning before diving into anything else. I wouldn't recommend that because I didn't, and it was fine. The TLDR is she dies and then she gets better. That's basically it. You can read it if you want. You can leave it if you'd rather not, and that's absolutely fine as well. There's also an issue called Prelude to Infinite Crisis, which is available and people talk about. You can see that here, and frankly, I would not worry about picking it up as the actual issue Prelude to Infinite Crisis unless you're obsessed, because actually what I eventually discovered is that it's an anthology issue, reprinting the following issues: Flash 219, Wonder Woman 214, and Superman Secret Files and Secret Files and Origins 2004. So you should read that Prelude to Infinite Crisis anthology if you can, but an easy way to read that is just reading those 3 single issues. They're not essential, these are just kind of window dressing more than anything else, but I'm pointing it out because a lot of reading guides get confused and recommend it and so on. I just want you to let you know what it is. Whether you read those or not is entirely up to you. And then back to the map here, right at the top. After you've read Identity Crisis, there is the Countdown to Infinite Crisis 80-page one-shot. This is a great 80-page issue. This seems to go before absolutely everything, except maybe the Rann-Thanagar War, which it hints at briefly. And so this is all about the death of a key JLA member. It's a great issue. It's really interesting. Can you see how cool this zooming thing is? I can zoom in all the way and nothing gets pixelated. I'm very, very happy with this. So that's where we start. Okay, so in the top half of this map are just the different thematic mini-series that I mentioned before. Omac, Vengeance, Rann-Thanagar, Villains. And we're going to talk about that first, and then we're going to dive into the more detailed Infinite Crisis-y stuff here. Let's get some clear ground rules. This event is sprawling. I'm going to be covering every single issue with Infinite Crisis branding of any kind. Some of them link to non-branded issues set either before the branded issue or after the branded issue within their own series. I'll mention those irrelevant. This is not a perfect guide. No perfect guides exist. If you are a type P reader and you think you have a perfect guide, well done. Please go to Reddit. I'm not really interested in feedback on something like that because this is something which is very much subjective, and unless I've got something which is categorically wrong, and I don't think there is, then this is always going to be a subjective thing. All I can do is give you a bit of guidance. So with these four series here, Villains United, Rann-Thanagar War, Day of Vengeance, and Omac tie-in, you can start with any of them that you want. If you've been reading the Superman issues along as part of my Superman guide, you would have covered some of the Day of Vengeance stuff and some of the Omac stuff. But let's just start on the left. Let's do the standard. Let's go to Villains United. So, Villains United, there's the branding there. It's a 6-issue series. So where does it start? It starts off here, Villains United issue 1, then Villains United issue 2, 3, 4, and you can see 5 and 6 here. So the green issues, really straightforward. Those are the essential issues. Villains United 6 reveals the existence of a major antagonist character. It's a bit of a twist. I'm not going to give away who it is, although the cover kind of does. But yeah, it's an important series to read. That's why I've marked it as green as an essential series. But what's all this? We can see all these branded tie-ins. So let's start off here. We've got in red, meaning that it's a token issue and is non-essential, is Batman Gotham Knights issue 66. This is a token issue. It's got a red border around it as a result. You can see here it's got a Villains United tie-in branding there. Now this issue is in the middle of an implicit arc involving Talia al Ghul and Prometheus, as you can see on the cover there. No need to read the implicit arc, no need to read the issue at all. It does say at the end of it, to be continued in JSA Classified issue 5, which is not a branded issue. Okay, what else do we have? We have this issue Breach. Now this is Breach from an ongoing series called Breach, which I hadn't read before. It's issue 7 and it is related to Villains United. You can read it by itself without reading the rest of the Breach series as long as you keep that relaxed type J mentality. What else do we have going on? Let's have a look over here at Nightwing, because the Nightwing issues here are quite interesting. There's two of them. There's issue 109, this one where he's on puppet strings, and issue 110, which features Robin. Now, these are token issues, that's why they're in red, so I wouldn't really recommend reading them, but they do have Villains United branding, as you can see here, and they are in the middle of an implicit story arc, and we're going to see a lot more Nightwing issues in a moment later on in the map. If you've come here from reading Superman, you'll notice here we have Superman issue 221, branded Villains United. I mentioned it in yesterday's video as part of my Superman reading guide for, what was it? The 11th era, I want to say, of Superman I was talking about. And here we can see the cover, Bizarro and Zoom. Now, it's a related issue, so worth reading, especially if you're a Superman fan. And it ends saying to be continued here in Action Comics number 831, also a related issue. On that note, that leaves one final issue for us to discuss, which is this one here, Firestorm. We're going to be looking at Firestorm quite a lot, but this is Firestorm issue 17. It's a related issue, and it's worth noting this is actually set directly after Villains United issue 4, which is up here, and before Villains United issue 5, which is here. So just FYI, we're going to come across Firestorm a lot more as well in the coming issues and the rest of this video. Okay, pardon me. That was Villains United. If you go onto my website and you have a look at this map, what you'll be able to do is zoom in, zoom out, look around, scroll around and get a feel for it. But there we are. Okay, well, with that being Villains United, let's pan out a bit. Let's go over here and have a look at something called the Omac Project. So let's go to the right-hand side. So with the Omac Project, let's start here with the first branded Omac tie-in issue. This is Superman number 217. It's branded, but it's in red, because even though it says Omac tie-in on the cover, it's got nothing to do with Omac. Anyway, we then go to Omac, issue 1. In this, a key JLA member has just been killed, so it is very important before you read Omac that you read this one up here in the corner, Countdown to Infinite Crisis, as I said. So hopefully you're paying attention to what I'm seeing, or if you're interested in it, hopefully you're checking out the written guide. So there we have Omac issue 1. Here we have Omac issue 2. Which is about Batman and really about Batman and intersects very much with Identity Crisis. So it's really important that you've read Identity Crisis by this point. Then we have Omac issue 3. Ignore Firestorm, we'll come back to it in a second. We have Omac issue 3. Now, Omac issue 3 then leads directly into not Omac issue 4. I'll start again. It leads directly into the Sacrifice storyline, which are all branded Omac tie-ins. Now, if you were here for yesterday's Superman video, you'll know exactly what I mean by Sacrifice. But Sacrifice is a Superman and Wonder Woman crossover. Here we've got Sacrifice Part 1, Superman 219. That is followed by Sacrifice Part 2, Action Comics 829. Then you have Adventures of Superman 642. And then you have Wonder Woman 219, which is, as it says here, Sacrifice Conclusion. Really important you read those four and you read those in that order and you read them actually after OMAC number 4. So then when we come back to OMAC number 4, here we have it. We have that there. That then leads us into OMAC number 5, which is the Omac Project. Here we are, Porn No More. And that then, now Project 5 is quite interesting. He's got the character Sasha Bordeaux and what happens to her, which is really important. And then that leads into OMAC number 6, which is an issue that ends with Brother Eye releasing a really key thing that affects what's happening with Wonder Woman and the events of Sacrifice and everything else. Really, really important. That then leads into these issues. These are branded as OMAC related issues, but have slightly odd branding. So if you see here, Wonder Woman is branded as it's Wonder Woman 221 and is branded as Omac Project Strikes. This is weird one-off branding, and it does reference what happens in Sacrifice quite heavily. And then we have this one-off branding here for Superman 222, which is branded Omac Aftermath. These issues are slightly strange. It's a bit odd that they're here. And actually, I can see from my notes, these are actually meant to be related issues. So I will just flip over and tweak that now. But that said, they are a good read. I enjoyed reading them. The Sacrifice arc, especially, is really interesting for this this part of the Identity Crisis, or rather Infinite Crisis storyline. I really enjoyed it. It's well worth picking up as a collector's edition if you can. As you will have noticed over here, we've got a bunch of things I haven't even mentioned. So let's try and go through them one at a time. This is all stuff that's thematically linked, but it's kind of hard to tie in. So let's start where we can. Let's start off with Birds of Prey. So Birds of Prey, we have issue 83, which is a token issue. So you can see here it's in red. It says Omac Project tie-in. Now above it we have issues 82 and 81. The reason for that is that this is part of an explicit story arc called Battle Within, and this is part 3. It actually ties in with Nightwing's arc. So the fact that it's here is slightly surreal, kind of hard to pin down. As well as that, we have some other OMAC branded issues that we don't want to forget if we're completionist about it. So we have Manhunter. Manhunter issue 14 is a related issue. That's why it's in orange. So it is kind of worth reading. I will point out this is part of the Manhunted story arc. But when you read this issue, there's a typo in it. It says Manhunted part 4, but it's not. It's actually Manhunted part 5. The first 4 parts are here. And this is Manhunter 10, 11, 12, and 13. And then Manhunter 14, Omac Project tie-in, is Manhunted Part 5. So you can read these if you want. They link in, these are the covers, they link in neatly to Manhunter. In fact, after I filmed this, I'm actually going to tie these up with just some arrows kind of indicating that they link in there. Sorry, I should have done that. But again, this highlights, as I just showed you, I can edit this live and on the fly. So if anyone has any tips or corrections, then please do shout, as long as it's not kind of pedantically trying to correct it and trying to make this a perfect reading order. There is, of course, no such thing. Okay, Firestorm. What's Firestorm doing up here? So this is Firestorm issue 18. It's a related issue, and it goes kind of round about here. So somewhere round about the reading of Omac Project 2 or 3. But to be honest, it's hard to pin down. And keep in mind, Firestorm 18, whilst branded as Omac Project, is actually the sequel to, over here, Firestorm 17. I did not draw an arrow from issue 17 to issue 18 because it would have messed up my very pretty diagram. So I did not do that. But it gives you an idea of how complicated this event is. What else do we have going on here? We have got Robin. So here we've got a couple of Omac tie-in issues. We've got Robin issue 143 and 144. 143 actually happens, so this issue here actually happens during Omac Project 6, and 144 then has a cliffhanger ending that goes into Robin 145, which I've stuck here, which is completely unbranded. But whilst it's unbranded, it then leads into a branded issue of Robin, or rather a branded issue of Teen Titans here, which we're going to talk about momentarily. We're going to talk about Robin, 146, Teen Titans, but this is now Infinite Crisis crossover branding. So let's pull away from it for a moment and let's go back to the Omac project. It's confusing, isn't it? It is confusing. I know. Imagine what it was like for me reading this and trying to piece it together. Okay, we're still on Omac Project. A couple of final ones. There's a JSA tie-in. JSA issue 76 is a related issue. It's got Mr. Terrific on the cover and it's an Omac Project tie-in. Right, is there anything that I've missed on the Omac Project? Oh, yes, there is. Aquaman. There's an Aquaman issue here, which as you can see is actually Aquaman number 35. This is a related issue to the Omac Project. It references the events at the end of Sacrifice and is really, really important. And it ties in explicitly with an Aquaman issue all the way down here. Oh, good Lord, look at that. It's over here. Again, this is a non-branded issue, hence dotted lines, but it leads into the next thing. So again, we're going to talk about this in the latter half of today's video. If, by the way, at this stage you're getting either motion sick from me zooming around or confused and fed up, I don't blame you in the slightest. I should take a moment to point out here, Infinite Crisis is not only a confusing event to read, not only a technically demanding event to map, but it is dull as shit and I didn't enjoy it. So I'm doing my best, but if you're finding this difficult to follow and slightly tedious, even by the standards of my channel, I can't blame you. Right, next miniseries, Rann-Thanagar War. What a lot of people don't realize is that the Rann-Thanagar War has a prequel series, which is this one, which is an 8-issue series called Adam Strange Planet Heist. It's collected in a trade paperback called Planet Heist. These are the 8 issues, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Issue 8 ends on a cliffhanger segueing smoothly into the Rann-Thanagar War, which is often cited as being a key preliminary lead-up series for Infinite Crisis. However, you can't read Rann-Thanagar War because issue 1 starts off and you'll be like, what the hell is going on? It makes no sense without reading Adam Strange. You'll notice all of these are red because in my opinion, none of these issues are worth reading. The Rann-Thanagar War has no link to Infinite Crisis other than literally, and I shit you not, the last page of issue 6. And then it ends saying to be continued in Infinite Crisis issue 1. So this whole thing, this whole Rann-Thanagar thing is, as far as I'm concerned, a complete red herring. It's token, it can be ignored. I'm not going to talk about this again at all. The one thing I'm going to mention about Rann-Thanagar and just these issues in general is Rann-Thanagar War is completely distinct to a series called Rann-Thanagar Holy War. That is an 8-issue maxi series that came out in 2008 and it's part of Final Crisis. So that Rann-Thanagar Holy War is nothing to do with Rann-Thanagar War. It's totally distinct, easy to get confused. I got confused, but ignore it. Similarly, do ignore any recommendations to read an Adam Strange special one-shot. Again, that's part of Final Crisis, not Infinite Crisis. Okay, let's zoom out here. Right, that's 3 of the lead-in miniseries, and my God, was that confusing. Unfortunately, we're not done yet. Now I want to talk about the Day of Vengeance miniseries. So before we dive into Day of Vengeance, which you can see here, unfortunately, Day of Vengeance isn't something you can just go straight into. You have to read, I kid you not, you do have to read these 3 Superman issues. Now, we'll remember these 3 Superman issues were slightly odd when we did our Superman reading order yesterday, because we've got Action Comics 826, fine. That then leads into Adventures of Superman 639, which has references to the event of Ruined as it's currently happening, and that then leads into Superman 216. Now, these issues kind of interrupted our original reading for the 11th era of Superman, a video that I covered yesterday. So in that video, there was a point where I jumped from, say, Adventures of Superman 638 to 640, specifically saying to ignore this issue. And that's because this is randomly a 3-issue story arc written by Judd Winnick across the 3 Superman series. Now, because Superman issue 216 ends with "to be continued in Day of Vengeance" and has a really clear, strong cliffhanger, then after this issue, you then need to go down and then read Day of Vengeance, which is here. So we've got Day of Vengeance there, issue 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, in which the Spectre does some wild shit in Spectre. In Day of Vengeance. Okay, let's zoom out a little bit. Let's see what else is going on. Well, on the left here, immediately you can see there's a couple of tie-ins branded Day of Vengeance. Let me just zoom in some more. You can see Day of Vengeance tie-in there, Day of Vengeance tie-in here. This is a series called Blood of the Demon. Issue 6 is this one with Etrigan on the cover, and issue 7 and issue 6. Oh, I've got that the wrong way around, haven't I? Do you know what? Again, I'm going to view this as an opportunity to highlight to all of you that I can correct these mistakes as we go. I love this new software I'm using for these reading guides. I very much hope people here appreciate it. So please do sound off in the comments and let me know what you think and provide me some encouragement. I would really appreciate that. So here we have Blood of the Demon issue 6. Then we have Blood of the Demon issue 7, both of which are Day of Vengeance tie-ins. This does end on a cliffhanger, but to be fair, I did read issue 8 of Blood of the Demon and I just started getting bored. It seems that every single issue ends in a cliffhanger, and this series is just really, really random. Anyway, that was Day of Vengeance, but wait. Here on the right-hand side, we've got more Day of Vengeance branded issues, and these are all JSA issues. Now, these are kind of essential, as far as I would put it. That's why they're in green. So we've got Day of Vengeance tie-in JSA 73. This issue is called Black Vengeance Part 1. We then have Black Vengeance Part 2, again, is branded with Day of Vengeance. And then in issue 75, we have Black Vengeance Part 3. We then have JSA 76, which we mentioned here as an Omac Project tie-in. And we then have, again, this is really random. Is Day of Vengeance here, then it's Omac Project tie-in here, then it's Day of Vengeance tie-in again here. And this is issue 77. It's related, but this whole JSA part is just kind of hard to keep a track on. But there we have it. Those are the JSA Day of Vengeance issues. After the Day of Vengeance, we then go into a couple of issues here that come straight out of it. These are issues of Outsiders. As you can see, this is Outsiders issue 29, and this is Outsiders issue 30. We're going to talk about that more in a moment because these are branded Infinite Crisis is here, and so we'll talk about that in just a second. However, I have put it here above the main Infinite Crisis logo. Let me zoom out a little bit more. Right, here we have it. Let's take a moment and pause. I'm actually going to pause recording for a second, grab a drink of water and take a deep breath because this is quite a lot. So let's just recap for a second. We have the top part of the map here, which is split into different zones. Villains United, Rann-Thanagar War, and as it turns out, Adam Strange, Day of Vengeance, Omac stuff, and then the Prelude stuff. You can see how all these kind of loop around. It's a lot of talking. Sorry about that. I'm just going to pause and resume in just a second. And when I do, we're going to come back and talk about the Infinite Crisis event and the core issues. All the issues that are branded Infinite Crisis is here, and all the issues that are branded Infinite Crisis crossover. As you're no doubt getting a feel of, all I can do here is offer you some guidance as to what's essential, what's related, and what links into what, because it's not really very clear. Hopefully that's of help to you. And yeah, thanks for hanging in there in the video. All right, let's resume. And we're back. I don't know about you. I needed a coffee. Right. I hope you're refreshed. I totally understand if the viewer rate for this video just completely nosedived. Let's get back into it. So we're back on the map. This is the upper part, which we are now thankfully going to be able to ignore. And now we're going to have a look down at the lower part. So when it comes to Infinite Crisis, once the event really starts kicking in, there's three things you need to keep in mind. There's three types of branding going on. There's the core Infinite Crisis event, which is the core event in the hardcover collections and the Absolute Edition, so on and so forth. And then there's the kind of the branded bits. Now, the branded bits fall into three discrete areas. One is the Infinite Crisis is here branding. The second is the Infinite Crisis crossover branding. And the third, right at the bottom, is the Aftermath branding, which then trails off into a whole thing that I'll be talking about for a few minutes at the end. I think the first most sensible question is what's the distinction between issues that are Infinite Crisis is here and issues that are Infinite Crisis crossover? To be honest, there isn't any. It doesn't really make any sense. So I don't know what the distinction is. It's hard to know why something is one and not the other, or vice versa. So, if you do know, answers on a postcard. But from my point of view, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start off with the core series. I'm going to work on that, and then I'm going to talk about the crossover issues and the is here issues. What I will point out is what I'm talking about a lot here is what issues link into what other issues. So as you can see here, what connects into what and when. So certain things need to be read before a particular Infinite Crisis issue or something. And as we know, some series kind of cross over. So you might need to read a Teen Titans issue and then a Robin issue and then a Teen Titans issue. So that really is the key knowledge that I'm hoping you can take away from what we're about to talk about. Like I always say, there is no perfect reading order. So, Infinite Crisis. Let's start off with issue one of Infinite Crisis here. This is issue one, distinctive image and so on. Now, you'll notice that this comes in where we started talking at the start of the video, when we were talking about stuff like the JLA issues here on the side. Now, to be honest, it really helps to have read those JLA issues before you actually go ahead and read Infinite Crisis number one. I personally hadn't done that originally, and I think that it's a good thing to do that if you can, just because it really makes a lot of sense. I don't want to give any spoilers or anything here, but the JLA issues here that kind of like lead into what happens to the JLA and the dissolution of the JLA, they are they're really good, they're really interesting, and they basically set the scene for literally the first few opening panels of this issue, the Infinite Crisis issue one issue. It's got the Trinity in it, as you can see, and also in this issue you have the very final event here from Day of Vengeance issue 6. So you can see how it all kind of fits in chronologically. Or maybe you can't. You then have Infinite Crisis issue 2, which is a key issue to keep in mind here. Um, as you can see on the side, there is a related issue that goes into it. This is from JSA Classified, and this is JSA Classified issue 4. It's marked Infinite Crisis here. We'll come back to that in a moment. So distinct to that, let's get back to Infinite Crisis here on the side. And sorry, the zooming's not quite playing ball today. Here we are. Here we have Infinite Crisis issue 3 with this amazing cover. This has got the destruction of two very key locations in the DC universe. After Infinite Crisis issue 3 is not issue 4. What you then need to read is the Infinite Crisis Day of Vengeance special. In order to understand this, you need to have read Day of Vengeance because the heroes do a very key thing here that relates to the final events of Day of Vengeance. After the Day of Vengeance special, we then have Infinite Crisis issue 4, as you can see here. As you can see, you've got Superboy and Connor having a big fight, and a really big, impactful thing happens to the city of Bloodhaven as well. We then have the Rann-Thanagar War here, and this is the Infinite Crisis special for the Rann-Thanagar War. It does state very clearly in this at the end, to be continued in Infinite Crisis 5, and here we have it. Infinite Crisis 5. I will point out, we'll come back to this, there's a scene in this which is a scene-by-scene parallel set of dialogue and moments to a scene happening in the Teen Titans Annual, which we're going to look at on the right-hand side of the map in a few minutes. After Infinite Crisis issue 5, we have Secret Files and Origins 2006, Infinite Crisis special again. It's got a lot of cool background stuff, and to be honest, this issue can go bloody anywhere, but I've put it here because it feels like it fits in really well. That then should be followed by Infinite Crisis issue 6, spoiler warning, Superboy Prime on the cover. And this has got the death of a key character. Don't worry, they get better as comic book characters always do. And after this, we then have, not issue 7, we have the Infinite Crisis Omac Project special. So this is definitely set after Infinite Crisis number 6 and has got a lot of key events related to the Omac Project that kind of like require you having read the Omac Project first to understand why what's happening on the cover here and what's happening with the antagonist here is so clever and so important. Subsequent to that, we then have, believe it or not, Infinite Crisis Villains United. And this is a special. Now, again, this requires you having read Villains United first, and it's set here. And the reason I've set it here is because the prison breakout referenced here is then also referenced in the finale, Infinite Crisis issue 7. And those are our core Infinite Crisis issues. You can try reading just these issues if you want, with obviously the special tie-ins as well. But frankly, without reading the preceding miniseries, not Rann-Thanagar, you can ignore that. But without reading the other stuff like Day of Vengeance and Villains United, you are going to find it hard going. Okay, that was the core bit. That was Infinite Crisis. Let's have a look at Infinite Crisis is Here branding. So to start off with, Infinite Crisis is Here branding has Adventures of Superman 645. It's a related issue and ends with to be continued in Infinite Crisis 1. Why have I got this as green? No, 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 no. This is a related issue. Let me change that. By the way, whilst I just paused momentarily to grab a coffee, what I had done, oh, let me change that as well. What I had done was I went back and I actually tweaked the things that I said I was going to earlier in the video. So I went back and I tweaked, let's pan out here. I've added a couple of little bubbles to guide you through, as I mentioned before. As I say, this is a live editable infographic, which I'm quite glad I've set it up this way so I can just correct things as I go if I spot little things that I need to do. So anyway, Infinite Crisis is here. There was that particular Adventures of Superman issue that we just talked about. And then in addition to that Adventures of Superman issue, what else is Infinite Crisis is here branded? JLA 119 for some reason. JSA classified number 4. So this is actually part of an ongoing arc called Power Trip, and so it's called Power Trip Part 4, and it does end specifically saying to be continued in Infinite Crisis 2. There. What else? Oh, up here, I know it's confusing. There's nothing I can do about that. We've got The Outsiders. I mentioned this before. So Infinite Crisis is here branding, issue 29 and 30. They follow directly on from Day of Vengeance 6. It's a two-parter called Unoriginal Sin. So I'd recommend reading that. What else have we got going on? We've got a Firestorm issue. We've got Firestorm 19 here. Infinite Crisis is here. We've got Superman 223 with Supergirl on the cover, but that's also an Infinite Crisis is here. These are all related issues. That's why they're in this amber orange cover. Gotham Central 37, again, related issue. What else do we have? Oh, we have a JSA two-parter. So this is branded Infinite Crisis is here. Is JSA issue 78 and 79. So this is Lost and Found Part 1 and Part 2. Part 3 is something we'll look about in just a minute. Where is Part 3? Oh, I'll show you Part 3 in just a second. And then over here on the left, as you can see, we have JLA issues 122 to 123. This is the middle of A World Without the JLA trade paperback collection. So that's why these issues have their own kind of sub-branding, saying A World Without Justice League and stuff like that. Okay, that was Infinite Crisis is here. Where was that missing JSA issue? The one that's the final part of the Lost and Found three-parter? Why, it's over here. However, it's marked as Infinite Crisis crossover, even though it's a direct sequel over here to Infinite Crisis is here. Like I say, I don't understand the distinction between the two types of branding. If anyone does know, answers on a postcard or more accurately, just in the comments down below. So let's have a look at some of the Infinite Crisis crossover issues. We've got Superman 224 and 225. They are linked issues. You need to read one, then read the other. Whilst on a distinct note, Adventures of Superman, which I'm trying to spot, is down here. Adventures of Superman 648 is a standalone related issue. Let's jump around because I can't do this in any kind of clear chronological sensible way. It just doesn't really work like that. We've got the JSA issue I mentioned before, JSA 80. We also have JSA 82 down here, also branded like this. This is a related issue in which Power Girl makes quite a key choice, and it then ends saying to be continued in 1 year later. We'll talk about 1 year later at the end of the video. JSA 81 over here is actually an unbranded issue. Noted that doesn't look right. It's an unbranded issue, and God knows why they did it that way, but they have. It's unbranded and it can be ignored, so I've stuck it in there. It is kind of like semi-related to the storyline, simply because of the continuity of where it is. After issue 81 with Stargirl on the cover, like I say, here you have Stargirl making a very critical decision about the JSA in a branded issue, so God knows how it works. What else do we have going on? We have Firestorm, yes, of course, worth mentioning. These are pretty essential issues because Firestorm 21 and 22 are essential issues. Firestorm 20, keep in mind we've already seen issues 17, 18, and 19 scattered around this map. This is a related issue, so I'm just going to change it to amber here, but a little bit of narrative about what this is about is probably going to be useful. So issue 20 is set before Outsiders issue 20, but it's set after the Rann-Thanagar War and is to be continued in Infinite Crisis 3 and 4. That's not helpful at all, is it? I'd recommend reading issue 20 and then reading issues 21 and 22, which are both essential issues. Very important stuff happens in that. And then issue 22 specifically says to be continued in Infinite Crisis 5. So it feels to me that's quite a sensible way of dealing with this. What else have we got going on? Oh, we've got this. So this is Superman, the final days of Superman, or rather the This Is Your Life arc. We mentioned this at the end of yesterday's video. So it's Superman 226, Action Comics 836, and Adventure of Superman 649. This ends by saying the last Adventure of Superman is the end of this series, and it says it's to be continued in Infinite Crisis 5, which we can see there. What else? I really hope I haven't missed anything. Oh yeah, up here we've got more Outsiders. So remember we had Outsiders here as the direct follow-up to Day of Vengeance. Well, after issue 30, we then have, he says, we then have issue 31, which is this one here. We then that then mentions the Rann-Thanagar War, but that's not irrelevant. That leads into issue 32, which says ends with to be continued in Infinite Crisis 1. And that also, of course, issue 32 leads into issue 33, which we'll notice here. All these are branded as Infinite Crisis crossover issues. Okay, that was Outsiders. Anything else I've missed? I think I've covered all those. Right, yeah. So do you remember here in in Omac Project? We've got these Robin issues, which are branded in as Omac Project. Then I said they have a completely unbranded issue here, which I just stuck on the side of the banner here. But then that unbranded issue leads into, as we can see here, Teen Titans. So this is Teen Titans 32. That leads directly into a branded issue of Robin issue 146. This is a two-parter called The Virtual Cell. And then you got the second part of it, Robin issue 147, again branded. And issue 147 ends saying to be continued in 1 year later. I frankly would recommend reading Teen Titans Annual 1 set after that. This is parallel to Infinite Crisis number 5 and ends saying to be continued in Teen Titans 34. That, unhelpfully, is a typo. When it says Teen Titans 34, it means This, Teen Titans 33, which is set after Infinite Crisis 5 and says to be continued in, as we will see in just a moment, Infinite Crisis 6 over here. Good God, it's confusing, isn't it? We also mentioned earlier in the video that we have an Aquaman Omac branded issue here on the right hand side. That leads into all the way down here, a non-branded issue there, which then leads into down here another branded issue of Aquaman there, which is Aquaman 37. It's very much related, and it's got Spectre destroying a key location in the DC universe there. Good God, I think that is that all of them? No, it's not all of them. We have Wonder Woman, issue 224. We also have, as I recall, a Green Lantern issue. Where are the Green Lantern? Here we are. A Green Lantern issue 7 marks Infinite Crisis crossover. This ends with a cliffhanger ending, so you have to read Green Lantern issue 8, which is not branded, but finishes that story. And then what do we have? Oh, we have some Nightwing issues. So Nightwing 118 and 117, is it? No, sorry, 116, as we can see here, which is a branded issue, and then 117, which you really have to read, but isn't a branded issue, but ties in directly. 116 ends on a cliffhanger. You cannot avoid that. You have to read 117 as well. To be fair, 117 ends on a cliffhanger, but I managed to grip my knees tighter and not carry on reading Nightwing at that stage. One day I'll do a Nightwing reading order. But to be honest, I might do that as part of a Batman reading order. Wait, am I going to do a Batman reading order? Well, it depends on how well the reading guide for this sells. On that note, again, feel free to have checked out. I appreciate this is complicated. I appreciate this is tedious. Hopefully you followed that through. A written guide for this is available, but the map, like I say, can just be viewed for free from our website as much as you want. Good God, I think that takes us through it all. Villains United, Rann-Thanagar War, Day of Vengeance, Omac Project, Infinite Crisis main series, Infinite Crisis here, crossover series, Infinite Crisis crossover series, all the spin-off issues, how they all link, where they all fit in. Good God, it never ends. Okay, last thing then to say is this, Infinite Crisis Aftermath. So these branded issues, there's two series here. The first one, let's look at this, Infinite Crisis Spectre. It's branded Aftermath. We have issue 3. Oh, this is the wrong order, isn't it? Issue 3, 2, and 1. Just for you lucky people, I'm going to swap these around. So it starts with issue 1. Terrifying moment there where I thought I just crashed the entire thing. Let's put issue 1 here. And let's put issue 3 there. Again, these are the sort of little rookie mistakes that are going to creep in from time to time. But anyway, here we are. Infinite Crisis, The Spectre, issues 1 to 3. It's a 3-issue miniseries set a year after the Infinite Crisis event and starring Crispus Allen. If you don't know who that is, you've got an interesting story ahead of you. The other Infinite Crisis Aftermath branded thing is The Battle for Bloodhaven, which is a 6-issue series. Issue 1 there, issue 2, 3. Have I got these in the right order? I do. 4, 5, and 6. This is a 6-issue series that do not feature Nightwing at all, even though they're branded Battle for Bloodhaven. To be honest, it's more of a Shade story. And by Shade, I mean the government agency Shade, involving Father Time, Captain Atom, and so on. Issue 6 ends saying to be continued in Uncle Sam and the Freedom Fighters. So on that note, let's just pan out for a second and let's have a moment just to consider what comes next, what comes after Infinite Crisis. Now, not only is Infinite Crisis an annoying event to read, and an annoying event to map, and a very annoying event to make a video on, and a really annoying event for you probably to watch this video, it's also an annoying event to try to work out exactly when it ends, because the branding is not very clear. As we've just seen, there's clear branding saying Infinite Crisis Aftermath, but one of those 6-issue miniseries ends by saying to be continued in another new series. it's not helpful. I've done my best to unpick it, but there's a lot of confusion here that can come around. So what I want to do is just quickly talk to you about some stuff that you don't need to know about and you can ignore when you're reading Infinite Crisis. So to start off with, straight after Infinite Crisis, there's a vague, poorly branded phase in the DC universe called Brave New World. This consists of an 80-page one-shot called Brave New World, which is a bunch of short stories setting up the following series. Now, I would not recommend these as part of this event. The series that get set up as a result of Brave New World are All New Atom. That's published from 2006 to 2008, and that's 25 issues. Creeper, the 2006 series. It's a mini series of 6 issues, but I'm not a fan of Creeper, so I wouldn't recommend it. Martian Manhunter, 2006 maxi series of 8 issues. I'm a big fan of the character, and I will read this one day. There was also an 8 issue maxi series of Omac in 2006. Again, I haven't read that, but feel free to if you want to. Then there was a 12 issue series called Trials of Shazam in 2006. That was written by Judd Winnick. And then, as we just saw, the Bloodhaven miniseries, or rather the Battle of Bloodhaven miniseries that we were just looking at, which was a 6 issue series, that ends by saying to be continued in Uncle Sam and the Freedom Fighters. Well, that's an 8 issue series from 2006, but even that isn't the end of it, because issue 8 of Uncle Sam and the Freedom Fighters then says to be continued in Uncle Sam and the Freedom Fighters Volume 2, which is printed in 2007 and is another 8 issue series. So it's really hard to kind of know when to draw a line, keeping in mind that if you were to read, for example, All New Atom 2006 to 2008, you're then getting perilously into Final Crisis territory and the next set of DC events. Now, I'm going to give a quick overview of what those events are because I'm not going to do an event video on them. The next event video I do in this series is actually going to be Blackest Night from 2010. And the reason is that this is all about my Superman reading guide, and Superman crossover issues don't really conflict with the events that I'm about to give you a quick overview of. But if you are reading Infinite Crisis and you're trying to be a completionist, then here's some stuff you need to know. The 1 Year Later event. 1 Year Later was a DC Comics event that crossed through every series in 2006. It's more of a publication phase or brand rather than an event. Essentially, in the aftermath of Infinite Crisis, every single series of the DC Universe leapt forward chronologically by a year's time in universe. And the events of that missing year were then depicted in real time in a comic book series called 52, which was published weekly. We'll come on to that in just a moment. So the 1 Year Later storyline started publication in March 2006, starting the same week that Infinite Crisis number 5 got published. Confusing, I know, and well before the first issue of 52. Most of the first issues bearing the 1 Year Later logo were first parts of multi-issue storylines and featured major changes to the status quo of each character, often deliberately leaving stuff unexplained in kind of a lost cliffhanger sort of way, so that people would carry on reading, carry on buying issues in the hope that those details would be filled in later or by remaining issues of Infinite Crisis or in fact the 52 series. One of the key things about 1 Year Later as a publishing, branding, or mega event is that quite a lot of key major league heroes were missing or inactive for most of the year during the 1 Year Later issues. And so when 1 Year Later started, these heroes weren't around. That includes Aquaman, Batman, yes, Batman went missing for a year, Blue Beetle, Green Arrow, Hawkman, Martian Manhunter, Nightwing, Robin, and Superman, and Wonder Woman and the Flash. So that's what you need to know about the 1 Year Later branding. I may do another video in the future if anyone's curious, but I just want to let you know that's where that comes in. It's after Infinite Crisis. All right, moving on. 52. Not to be confused with anything to do with the DC New 52. I am obviously the New 52 expert on the internet, as you will know from my reading guide. This 52 series is nothing to do with that, although it does kind of really kick in DC's obsession with the number 52. So 52 was a weekly comic book series published from May 2006 till May 2007. 52 issues, one a week for 12 months. It takes place during that missing year between Infinite Crisis and when the 1 Year Later branding starts. And the series essentially involves rebuilding the DC universe after Infinite Crisis. And it mainly features like main characters or protagonists who are normally supporting characters. And the reason for that is because Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, like we've just all said, they're all out of commission during this missing year. Anyway, it examines a full year in the life of these characters before catching up to the regular issues in 1 year later. Keep in mind it consists of 52 issues, published weekly, and each issue details an actual week of events taking place during that missing year. It covers most of the DC universe and lots of different characters. Now, it's followed directly by a weekly limited series called Countdown to Final Crisis. So, Countdown to Final Crisis was actually a series called Countdown, which is a 51 issue series. The last 24 issues of it got rebranded and started being called Countdown to Final Crisis. But keep in mind that these 51 issues are distinct and separate to the 52 issues in the series 52. So after the final issue of the Series 52, we then have Countdown starting. It debuts in May 2007, but it is numbered in reverse order. So the first issue to be published is 51. The next issue the next week is issue 50. The week after is issue 49, and so on for a whole year. Very confusing, I know. And again, much like 52, it's basically a lot of interconnecting ensemble stories with an ensemble cast. 52 then ends with issue 0 of the 50 Countdown ends with an issue 0 of the Countdown series, and that leads straight into Final Crisis. Final Crisis is a crossover storyline, 2008, primarily the 7-issue miniseries of the same name written by Grant Morrison. It's all about not just the New Gods, but also the Monitors, the multiverse, Darkseid, all that sort of stuff. The storyline, like I say, directly follows the conclusion of the 51 issue Countdown to Final Crisis weekly series. Remember, it starts off being called Countdown. Towards the end, it gets rebranded to Countdown Final Crisis. Promotion about the limited series actually describes the story as the day evil wins, although that's not really the case. And the series is mainly about Darkseid, so the new god who's in charge of the planet Apocalypse, and his plot to overthrow essentially everything in the universe and to basically take over the whole DC universe. I'm not going to be covering the Final Crisis event in this event guide because I have read it. I liked it even less than I liked Infinite Crisis, and I don't need to cover it in order to do a Superman reading guide. If I do my reading guides for, as I plan to, Flash, Aquaman, and Wonder Woman over the coming months and years, then I may end up touching on Final Crisis then, who knows. But for now, I'm not going to be covering it. Okay, right, that is probably well over an hour. That is my entire Infinite Crisis reading guide. Confusing as hell. I hope the map was helpful. If anyone wants a reading guide, that is available. And yeah, thanks for watching all. And there we have it. In case you're interested in knowing where these resources are, so the guides, the maps, and so on, they're all available on my website. They're all available for free. You can go into the website, which is nogodsorkings.com, and download the Google Sheet for the Superman reading order, or you can go on the website and look at these reading maps for all the various DC events and a whole bunch of other things I've got on there to your heart's desire. If, however, you are interested in a written version of this guide, then it is available on Amazon. I've recently just self-published it. It is the cheapest possible tier you can get on Amazon. So it's 79 pence UK, 99 cents American, and so on. It's free if you're on Kindle Unlimited, and there is a free sample on the website as well. The reason I put this onto Amazon is kind of a proof of concept. I'm interested to see if people are interested in the written guides, whether or not people want to pick them up. And also, it's a good way for me to bat off all the people that are going to be in the comments asking for a Batman guide. If you want a Batman guide, I don't really particularly have any interest in doing one, but I will do one if this book gets 500 reviews. So if this book gets 500 5-star reviews, then I will start doing a Batman reading guide at some point. I don't think that's going to happen, but there we are. Of course, feel free to support the channel by picking this up. Of course, like, comment, and subscribe. But as always, the best way to support the channel is by picking up one of my other books, which isn't a non-fiction reading guide. It's actually a fictional, completely original superhero story. It's prose, so not a comic or words, but it's about superheroes in just a really interesting kind of post-apocalyptic dystopic idea. The first 4 books of the series are out, and if you want to support, please pick that up. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay classy.